And welcome to this session of our EpiDoc training program. And in this session, Gabriel Bodar is going to talk about how to encode hand lettering and scripts in EpiDoc. So please, Gabby.
Thank you, Irene. So yes, I'll be talking about what is generally in epigraphic terms described as the description of the letters or something similar, and in TEI terms is down here is the hand description. This is part of the manuscript description section in the TEI document that we've been showing at the start of several of these slideshows. And this is the template for how EpiDoc uses the manuscript description element and its child elements. So as I said, the description of letters in an epigraphic edition, and just here's one from, for example, from the inscriptions of Roman Cyrenaica, will often say something about the date of the lettering, as that's one of the primary ways in which epigraphers and papyrologists describe lettering. It might say something about, whether it's cursive or monumental or letterhand or so forth, whether it's good or not, its quality, as here. Something about the dimensions of the letters, which is usually letter heights, but could also include some things like interlinear height and so forth, and description of any special characters, which includes stops and so forth, but also abbreviations and ligatures and things like that. Sometimes are mentioned in this section. I'm showing here, incidentally, below the description of letters, a vaguely diplomatic and almost diplomatic view of this same inscription, just to give a sense of how this description of letters works in combination with a view of what's on the stone. So you can compare the two, which is how you would normally read this in an edition. And obviously, working from a photograph is also a very common way, a photograph or a squeeze or a drawing, very common way to see the actual description of the letters. So to encode that, we use this hand desk element in the manuscript description feature. This is the hand description element, and that contains a hand note containing exactly the text that we've just seen in the edition. So no weird structuring or anything else needed there. Incidentally, the seeming redundancy of having a hand description containing a hand note is there so that if there are multiple hands on the same inscription or on the same cluster of inscriptions described in the same edition, and there can be multiple hand notes in the hand description. So the hand description can describe more than one hand. Each hand note describes one hand, and so you can give each of these hands, for example, an identifier, which can be the way you structure it in the actual transcription of the text. There could be a hand shift element in the text saying this is where hand 2 starts, this is where hand 3 starts, and so forth. But for our example, there's just this one hand note because there's a single piece of text in our edition. And the main thing that we might want to encode in here, because this is the sort of thing that we might want to be able to treat in some way, to search for, to filter by, and so forth, is those letter heights there. The letters in this inscription are apparently 0.005. Which, if you're used to reading epigraphic editions, you would understand means letter heights there. And if you stop and think about it for a moment, that's almost certainly going to have to be in meters, right? Because which means half a centimeter. It's not going to be given that it couldn't be anything smaller. It couldn't be inches or anything like that because there's no way letters would be that small. So to tag that, we simply add this height element. You've seen this before in the dimensions in various previous tutorials, and we put unity was meter on there just to make it explicit. So we should compare this to other corpora, for example, that might use centimeters, because it's for the height of an object, meter might be perfectly sensible way to encode it. But saying 0.005 is actually, even if you know you're always using meters, it's a little bit hard to visualize 0.005 of a meter. Saying 0.5 centimeters, you can immediately see that sort of half centimeter. Right. So having meter in there just makes this absolutely explicit. Even if it's clear in your corpus, it's useful for compatibility with other corpora. And that's the main thing you'd want to tag in the hand note there. A few notes about that height element. We've seen the unit attribute telling us what whether that's meters, centimeters, inches, kilometers, etc. The other attributes that you can attach to height, if you want, some of these have been discussed in the dimensions discussions in previous tutorials, but just briefly, you can attach a value attribute to it if you want to make sure that there is always a numerical value on this. The value attribute is, it validates to having a numerical value. So, if you want to be sure that the height, the display value of height might be something like approx ½ an inch or things like that, but you want to have a value of also whatever that is, as 0.8 centimeters or something, or 1.2 centimeters or something as ½ an inch. If you want numerical values which are not necessarily specific, you can use the at least and at most attributes, which give you an estimated range. The letters are about 5 to 8 millimeters high, or if what you're saying is not that we're talking about an approximate range, but we're talking about the observed range, we can say from and to. So the smallest letter we find in this corpus, in this text, is 6 millimeters, and the largest letter we find in this is 17 millimeters. That's maybe a tiny omicron and a very long phi. We can use from and to record those if we want to. And if we want to say circa, if we want to say this is approximate, we can use precision equals low. Again, we've seen most of these attributes before in other presentations. So treating the height of the letter here is not so different from treating the dimensions in any other area. If you want to, incidentally, I haven't talked about this here, but if you wanted to record the interlinear heights as well as the letter heights, you might want to put a type on the height attribute and say type letters, height type letters, height type interlinear, or height type lines, or something like that, to give a different heights in there. That's not very common, so I haven't put an example of it, but that's the sort of thing that one can do if you want to record several different kinds of things. And in some languages, in Greek and Latin, not so common, but in some languages and scripts, it might be useful to record the width of characters, for example, in your corpus. And so you could use the width element as well, which has exactly the same attributes available as height. So in summary, the kind of information which is contained in the hand note, in the description of letters in an edition, are paleographical features and discussion of special characters. You can, some of the things in there you might want to tag using a G if you've got symbols which are not easy to encode. You might want to tag as foreign if you want to display characters differently than the default script, or if you need to use special fonts for them, or if you just want to record them as being in a particular language or script. Making a difference between the Greek characters, the Latin characters, or the difference between cuneiform characters and hieroglyphic characters in the same inscription, or something like that. So you can attach language and script encoding to some of those attributes, some of those elements. You might want to record ligatures, numerals, symbols, and uncertainty about hand shifts, perhaps, in one of these notes. But most of the encoding that you're going to do of paleographical features and special characters will probably be in the transcription, not in this hand note in the end. So in fact, as in the example I showed here, many hand notes will potentially have a height tag around the letter heights, but not much else by way of encoding at all. But those are the options available to you there. Anything to add to that, Irene?
No, thank you. It was perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you.